are we doing any paperwork on it or what?
There's a test. So for this one, there's technically a communication like in-person test where you guys have to make paper airplanes and explain to each other how to make them without looking at questions and this whole thing. But we obviously can't do that right now. There's Evan. So we're just going to be going through the PowerPoint. Take notes if you can, listen if you can, and then we'll talk about taking the test maybe next week or the week after. So for now, we're just going to do the lecture. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion about it. Chime in if you need help or when you can. Yeah, we're just going to go through this as it is right now. So, welcome, Evan. Thank you for joining. So here we go. This first module is module 7, and we're going to talk about communication skills. So there's 2 different PowerPoints. I hope we can get through them both today. And really, the first PowerPoint is on the different styles of communication with talking and listening. The second PowerPoint are the other 2 styles of communication, reading and writing. So this one talks about how we talk to each other, how we listen to each other, why it's important. So that's kind of what we're going to go over with this first PowerPoint. So it's about good listening skills, what it means to listen actively, things like that.
You're cutting out a little bit. What'd you say at the end?
We're talking about listening skills.
Okay.
And talking skills. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, sorry, I'm confused about some shit.
What are you confused about?
Not this. Someone sent me a message, so I had a confused face. Like,
got it. Sounds like a plan. So this first one, as I just mentioned, we're going to talk about listening and speaking. So important part about listening, especially this is all going to pertain to like a construction job site. So when you see things about saying like, oh, workers must hear instructions, we're talking about construction sites. So yes, these are good skills that can pertain to any like job that you go into, but because this is NCCER, it's all going to go back and talk about that construction job that you guys are potentially preparing to be involved in. So for the first 2, listening and speaking, it's all about being able to listen to instructions clearly and know how to respond to certain sounds. You're going to need to know and be able to be constantly listening for certain sounds on a job site, especially a construction job site. And then with speaking, it allows you to train others potentially. If you get to that point where you can move up in the company, you'll be able to train other people. You need to know how to do that and be able to speak clearly and effectively, right? Then we'll talk about reading and writing in the next PowerPoint that we talk about. So this is a communication process. So if you haven't seen a chart like this before, this is pretty common. A pretty common chart with any sort of listening and speaking or communication in general. It doesn't have to do with construction. But basically there's a communication channel in any sort of communication that happens. So you have a sender. A good example right now is I'm a sender of communication. The communication channel is this Zoom video chat that we're doing right now. You guys are the receivers, and then you'll be giving me feedback to decide what I should continue to say. So if Billy looks at me with like this crazy confused face, like what the heck are you saying? That's going to give me a cue to maybe go back and repeat what I was saying, right? So this is our communication channel. I say something through this Zoom video chat, or maybe it was in a classroom, or maybe I was talking to you guys over a different medium. You guys receive that information and you give me feedback to decide if I said things clearly or not. So here's an example, or here's what could happen if there's things that could interfere with that communication channel. So they like to use the word noise in terms of communication getting blocked or things getting in the way of communication. And noise can be more than just literal physical noise, right? So yeah, like if my dog starts barking at me right now, that's going to be noise that gets in the way of me being able to communicate this information to you right now. That's literal physical noise in my environment that's blocking you guys from being able to hear me. But there are other things that could also interrupt communication, that could make communication harder between two more people. And that's things like, it's called semantic noise. If we have a different understanding of the meanings of words or phrases, if we have a different understanding of a certain topic, then we're going to have different ideas about what we're saying. We're not going to be able to communicate as effectively. If I'm writing something to you and I make a pretty bad grammar error, or I make a pretty big typo, I'm not going to be able to communicate that as well. That's called syntactical noise, because syntax is part of writing. That's a type of noise that can interfere with communication if I'm not writing very clearly. There's something called cultural noise. That's when we have stereotypical assumptions that get in the way of understanding. So if you have an assumption or a stereotype about how one person may be or how one person may think when you communicate with them, that may get in the way of your ability to communicate with them effectively. So that's also a type of noise that could get in the way with communication. And then there's something called psychological noise. So we have attitudes and emotions that can get in the way of us listening to people effectively. If I'm really angry at somebody and we're having a fight, I'm not going to be listening to them very well if I'm constantly just trying to figure out what I'm going to say next because I'm so angry at them. I'm not going to hear them properly. I'm not going to try and absorb their information very well because I'm just going to be trying to be angry and say my piece, right? So there are the way that we think, the way that we act, the way that we interact with each other can all be ways that we have a hard time communicating with each other. It's called noise that gets in the way. That's at least how the book likes to describe it. Other ways to communicate with each other have nothing to do with talking or speaking or writing or listening to each other. And that's everything to do with nonverbal communication. So we communicate nonverbally every day, whether you think you do or not, you do it constantly. A good examples of nonverbal communication that you see here on the slide, hopefully you guys can see it right now. Grooming, that's the way, that's like our hygiene, the way that we take care of each other. I mean, if my hair was like this big rat's nest on the top of my head, you'd be like, oh, wow, what's going on with her, right? Like, ooh, that's different. Something might be happening with her.
Don't you read facial expressions?
Absolutely, yeah. And that one, good job,
Mainly
Billy.
facial expressions.
Absolutely, we do. Yeah, facial expressions are one of the biggest ways that we communicate without actually talking to each other, right? Because if you're looking at me like, oh my God, you're giving me like crazy eyebrows, you're giving me like this really worried face, I'm going to know that you're thinking about something. I need to stop and ask questions. I need to slow down, whatever it may be. You didn't have to say anything for me to recognize that because of the expression that's on your face. Very similar situation with posture and gestures. This is a lot easier class to teach in person because I would give you some gesture examples or some posture examples. But a great example is when I'm crossing my arms like this and I'm turning away from you. That might indicate that I don't want to have a conversation with you. I might be angry with you, or I might be trying to be reserved because I'm uncomfortable in some sort of way, right? And that's a little bit harder to demonstrate over Zoom. But that's a huge example, a huge way of how we communicate with each other without even saying a word, without writing anything down. Also, the condition of our personal environment or our work area is a great way to communicate to people, kind of who you are as a person, how you do things. Somebody walks into my office and my office is a mess and there's papers everywhere and there's food everywhere and there's trash on the floor and on the countertops. That's a way to communicate who I am and how my personal organizational skills are, right? I don't have to tell you anything for you to know, ooh, she's not very organized. There are a lot of ways that we communicate without even saying 2 words to each other. So as I mentioned before, this is a PowerPoint specifically on listening and speaking. So we're going to hone into that for a moment. So listening and speaking, they're required skills to learn and to teach. For example, learning and teaching on the job takes place when, and here's a bulleted list, when you're giving or taking instructions, especially on a job site. If you're offering or listening to a presentation, this is an example of a presentation right now, right? I'm presenting this information to you. If you're participating in a team discussion, the way that we do in our 9 a.m. meetings every day, those are team discussions that we have to listen to each other and share with each other. Same with talking with coworkers or talking with clients. You guys are technically, considered my clients because I directly help you guys and I support you guys, but that's a terrible word. I hate it. But working on the job site, you guys might have clients that you're working with. If you are a contractor, you're going to have a client that you're working for, helping build their house or helping build their building, whatever it may be. You're going to have clients and you're going to need to know how to effectively communicate with them professionally. I'll talk about that in a bit too, what it means to professionally communicate with somebody. But one thing to keep in mind is that you're learning much more when you're listening than when you're speaking. So if you're supposed to be learning something, a good note is to maybe listen instead of speak, right? And that's something that you think would be kind of common sense, but some people might need that reminder that if you're trying to listen and learn something, then it's probably best if you don't talk because it's hard to learn.
Listen twice, speak once.
There you go. I like that, Billy. Listen twice, speak once. Measure twice, cut once, right? That's a good rule of thumb that you've probably talked a lot about in construction already. You're so right. Pay attention in the beginning, and you hopefully won't run into mistakes later. And this leads me into what's known as active listening. Does anyone want to explain what active listening is, if you guys know? Does anyone know what that is?
I don't know typically what it is, but I don't know, like, I always like active, like, are you talking about like acting on what you're listening to, or like your reaction to it? Are you talking about your reaction?
It's kind of about that. You're on the right track. So
I don't know. I kind of go with like life's 10% of what people tell you and 90% of your reaction. So it's like 10% of what happens in your life, and is 90% of your reaction how you deal with it.
totally. I like that. I like that a lot. And I think that that has a lot to do with this as well, is like you're listening to things, you can't control what other people tell you, but you need to control how you react to it. And you need to control if you're going to listen to that and take those instructions and do something with them and do right by them, right? And I think that that does have a big part in active listening, because active listening is really about putting your entire self into listening to somebody. It's about if you guys are, doing other things, you guys are all paying attention to me awesome right now. But if I saw somebody else was over there and they were, texting on their phone at the same time, then they got up and walked away and went to talk to somebody and then they came back to it, that's not considered active listening, because you're not putting your entire self into what that person is saying. Active listening, it takes effort, it takes concentration, it takes your ability to listen without trying to speak first, right? Truly listening to somebody and taking in what they have to say before you formulate what you want to say back. It's an important skill on a construction job site, and it's an important skill in your relationship outside of work. It's probably one of the most important things you could take out of the lesson today, I think. I'm not even that great at it. I've worked very hard to be a good active listener, and I could definitely improve in that area. It's easy for me to interrupt people, and I feel like I have a lot of things to say, and I have a hard time controlling myself and not talking when it's not my turn. So I think it's something that definitely is a work in progress for probably a lot of people, certainly for me. So a lot of it is nonverbal communication as well as just sitting and listening. So if somebody's sitting here like this, listening to me and really looking at me, and I can tell you guys are all a great example. I can see all your faces right now that are sitting there looking at me. That is a great tip for me, that I can see that you guys are listening and actively trying to listen to me. If you're looking at me, you look engaged. You're not sitting over here on your phone doing something else. You're really paying attention to me. Um, and this says here, think about what a nonverbal message you are sending the next time you're the listener. So it's all about being very conscious about who you are as a listener in that moment. If I were the one that was speaking, how would I want somebody to listen to me? Would I want somebody to be really engaged? Ask questions, be like, oh wow, can you elaborate on that? Instead of just being like, oh yeah, whatever, not really paying attention, right? So active listening is important for being on a job site, especially because construction job sites have a lot of hazards that you need to be aware of, and you need to know how to use things properly so that you don't injure yourself or others. So you need to listen to instructions on that. But also just in your everyday life, it's important to be able to keep and maintain relationships by being good active listeners. We're going to skip over this slide. So things that make it hard to be an active listener, or barriers to listening, they call it in the textbook, are things that we talked about in the beginning. They're considered noise. So they're considered barriers to your communication channel. So things that are personal barriers that could affect your ability to listen and take in information that people are saying. Like we mentioned before, emotions are a big one. If you're angry at somebody, if you're afraid of somebody, if you're sad, if you're bored, right? That's the next one on there. That's part of an emotion as well. You're not going to be able to listen very effectively. If you're horribly bored, you simply can't keep your mind on the topic that your instructor is talking about or whatever, then it's going to be hard for you to pay attention, right? Just in general, if you're not interested in it, it's hard to pay attention. That could be a barrier. Having distractions, like we talked about, noise, like physical noise nearby. If there's a dog barking outside, if there's people yelling downstairs, that's going to make it hard to listen. And here's an important one that can really affect active listening, definitely, is your own ego. So it says it often shows itself through finishing other sentences and generally acting like a know-it-all. I am, at blame for this a lot. I can definitely finish other people's sentences thinking that I know what they're going to say, thinking that I know best. I've been in that situation often. Um, and so this is all about being self-aware. So if that's something that you know that you do, be aware of it next time it happens, right? Be aware of how you're interrupting people, how you're listening to people. Think about how you like to be listened to. And if you like people to be engaged and having eye contact with you, then that's how you should listen to people as well. It's all about being aware of what you're talking about, being aware of your body and space, and how you're affecting other people. But enough about listening. We're going to move on to speaking. So being an effective speaker is more than just speaking your mind, especially if you're in like a job site where you're the leader of that job site that day. You're supposed to be giving instructions, whatever it may be. You need to know how to speak effectively. So a big deal is thinking about what you wish to say. Make sure that you have it prepped out. I planned this curriculum ahead of time so that I knew what I was going to talk about. We don't make these PowerPoints to give them to us, but I know what this PowerPoint was going to say. I reviewed it. I made sure I was ready to talk about these things today, so I wasn't just, spinning nonsense at you guys. But a key thing here, don't think about what you're going to say while you're listening to somebody. That's not active listening. Listen to somebody, absorb the information, and then decide what you're going to say so that you don't end up interrupting people. Organize your ideas logically. That's like what I did with this curriculum. I made sure that everything was logically organized so that I was ready to give this information in a thoughtful manner. If it's something like a class, you can encourage note taking. I could encourage note taking for you guys now if you wanted to. Try not to over explain things because people will get bored if you keep saying the same thing over. And I know I'm at fault for that too. I over explain a lot of things. But especially if it's simple one and done instructions, say them clearly so that you don't have to say them over and over again. Maintain eye contact with people so that they know that they're intended to be engaged at this moment. Again, Zoom is hard to maintain eye contact with people, but I can see your faces right now. You're obviously staying engaged with me, so that's awesome. Another big deal, this kind of goes along with texting and being on your phone at the same time as listening, especially on a job site. That wouldn't be okay. You guys know that, to not text during listening to instructions or things like that. But it's hard to listen to somebody if you're communicating with others. It's hard to communicate with other people if you're talking with others. If I'm sitting here as a speaker and I'm trying to be on my phone texting, it's not a very effective speaker if I'm distracted as a speaker, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And then before you dismiss people, make sure they understand what you're talking about. Try not to move too quickly. If people remember, read that body language. If people have confused faces, check on that. Make sure that you need to, hey, does anybody have any questions? Is there anything we need to go over? Make sure that people are understanding what you're saying. Speaking of, is everybody good on what I'm saying so far? Any questions? Cool. Sounds good. We'll keep going. And this next part is about phone calls. So we're just going to kind of skim over it because you guys, I think this curriculum was made kind of before our era of being on phones all the time. There's a whole part about talking on the phone and texting and things like that. But if you are taking phone calls like for a job or on a work site or things like that, these are good things to know. So if you are in a place where distractions are not safe, especially on a job site, if you're driving, operating machinery, and it's not safe to be distracted, make sure that you put that phone away. You should not have it on, either turn it off or put it in a locker somewhere so that it can't distract you and be a hazard. Be aware of company and site policies. So maybe, your company allows you to go take a break, a 10-minute break, and be on your phone somewhere near the job site. Some companies might not let you have your phone out at all during the day. So you need to be able to read those policies, make sure you understand them and follow them or whatever. Another part of that is if you're taking pictures of things that are on a job site, that might be frowned upon by your company. So it says it can pose a serious threat to companies' intellectual property if you're taking pictures of logos and things like that. So it's a good rule of thumb to not take pictures of your company's property or anything that you're doing on a job site. When placing a call, you guys are typically good at this, especially now that we're getting used to the voicemail system for calling them when you guys are sick. I know we have to use that now since we haven't been in the real building for a while. But like we had told you guys in the beginning, if you're leaving a voicemail or if you're trying to call somebody, make sure you identify yourself first. Because before we knew people's voices very well, it was like, can't be in today, hang up. And we're like, oh my God, who was that? We had no idea who was trying to leave messages or whatever it may be. So when you're making a call, make sure you say who you are, especially if it's someone you've never called before. Make sure you're speaking clearly. I can't tell you how many voicemails we have had to decode because it's like mumble, 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 hang up. So make sure that if you're leaving a voicemail, if you're talking to somebody, make sure you're talking very clearly, talking loud enough that people can hear you. Your voicemails are always brief, so you guys know how to do that. Just keep things brief. Leave your number so that somebody can call you back, especially if you're trying to contact a client on a job site or something like that. Make sure that they have a way to contact you back. And then with receiving telephone calls, this can be especially important if you're trying to get in contact. Maybe you're playing phone tag with a client or a company, or if you're like trying to get an interview from a company and you're waiting on a phone call from them to schedule that interview. Make sure that you're like, okay, this is a 509 area code that I don't know. I'm sure that this might be an interview. So immediately pick up the phone and say, hi, this is Lily. Who are you? Right? Or hi, this is Lily. How can I help you? Right? So that they don't have to be like, hi, I'm looking for Lily Schaefer, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. Just immediately identify yourself right as you answer the phone, and that can eliminate a lot of confusion. That's what I always do when I answer the phone. And then you guys don't deal with transferring calls and things like that. Okay, how are we feeling about listening and speaking to each other? Good?
Good.
Awesome.
Pretty good about it.
Good. I know a lot
Why
of
is
it
like
seems...
nobody in the meeting? There's only 4 of us.
I know. I'm kind
There
of
should be
disappointed.
like at least 17.
I know we have 4 people that are on the job site, so we expected them not to be here, but I'm not sure everyone else is at. But I'm recording it, so hopefully they can catch it later.
What, they didn't go to the job site today?
What's that?
Did they go to the job site today or no?
Yes, they did. There were 4 people that I know for sure on the job site, so we shouldn't
Because I
expect...
left my boots in that office room or wherever when I got those papers and that laptop.
Mhm.
Are they still sitting there on the floor or wherever?
I haven't been in the office, but I'm sure they are. If you left them there,
Okay.
I'm sure that they are.
Because they were just sitting right by where Alex was when he handed me the laptop.
Oh, got it. Then I'm sure.
Because they were just like right in that room where everybody sits.
Got it. What do you guys see now on my screen?
Just see you looking out to the camera.
Do you see anything being shared?
Nope.
Okay. Let's try.
Next session. Are you on number 2?
Can you see it now? Can you see the new PowerPoint now?
Yeah, core curriculum. At first it was showing your face for weird reasons.
Wait for it.
Over the thing. There it goes.
Show presenter view. Okay. Can you guys see the new PowerPoint now? It says basic communication skills at the bottom.
Yeah.
Somewhat, but yes.
And now it says reading and writing at the top.
Yes, I see that.
Yeah.
Session 2.
Awesome. Fantastic. I'm figuring this out. Okay, we are going to kind of skim over this next one too. I know I'm going kind of fast. Let me guys know, Let me know, you guys, if I need to slow down or go back and explain anything, because I'm just trying to get through this that we can finish it within the 40-minute time limit that we apparently have now. So we're going to move right along to reading and writing. It's our other forms of communication that the book likes to talk about. So we talked about being able to just have conversations, listen and speak. Now we're going to go to the writing and reading other people's writing, especially in like email communications and written textbooks and other things, instruction booklets that you would need to read on the site and things like that. So moving right along. Pardon me. So reading on the job as a construction worker in any sort of way, whether you're a cement mason or a welder or a general contractor, there will absolutely be instructions and instruction manuals that you will be required to read in order to operate, especially when you're first getting started and still learning the ropes, still learning how things work. You're definitely going to need to be able to read and understand construction instruction books. So they give the example of code books as being an example of a worker that might need to be able to successfully complete a task for a project. So they have the example here, a national fire alarm and signaling code book and a life safety code book, right? So code books are typically like instruction manuals. Like when we have like a fire code, it's our instructions for how to handle if we have a fire in the building, right? So that's something that's you're definitely going to need to know how to read. So here are some examples of other things. Safety instructions, drawings like blueprints. You guys have done the blueprint work. Alex has been working on that with you in the last few weeks. Being able to look at, read, and interpret a drawing like a blueprint is going to be really important for a lot of the work that you do. being able to read safety signs and safety labels on certain machinery or other sorts of things that you'll be working with. Right. If you're higher up, you might need to read like work orders or schedules or permits or things like that. If you're one of those higher up people that gets to approve certain projects, you might be doing that. And then of course, emails and text messages and things like that will be important as well, no matter what level you're at in your company. So they give you some examples here for places to go for guidance in a textbook. So are you guys familiar with using and reading textbooks? Is there anybody that's not so familiar with that? I know we have a few at work, of course, but everybody feels good with that? Yeah, I see Gwen's giving me a head nod. I'm not sure if Billy and Evan are still there, but I'm hoping that there they are. I see them. Thank you. So the example that they give here for places to go for guidance in a book or something like the table of contents. Has anybody actually used the table of contents and not just skip past it? Hopefully, you guys have all been familiar with using the table of contents.
Isn't the table of contents that gives information on certain pages about what?
Absolutely, it is, Evan. Yep,
like
you're right about that.
The drawing and it's going to be on this page in a certain chapter and lesson.
Yep. So your table of contents helps take you to an exact chapter. If you're looking for something like the NCCER book, I think that's what this is, the NCCER book. So if you wanted something specifically about Module 7, basic communication skills, you're like, okay, what page is that on? Go straight to the table of contents at the beginning of the book, and I'll tell you the page to turn to for Module 7. What does a glossary do?
Glossary.
Does anyone know what a glossary is?
Doesn't it just give like the chapter info, definitions?
Definitions, that's right. It gives you word definitions at the end of the book. Not all books have them, but a lot of, especially things like construction manuals and things like that, textbooks will have a glossary at the back so that it can define certain words that might not be super common. That's what glossary would do. Does anyone know what appendixes are?
No.
Thanks, Billy. Thank you for the answer. Appendixes will also usually be found in the back. They can often be associated with the tables and graphs. They can point to places in the book where you would find certain things, certain like pictures. If you were trying to find that one picture that showed something, go back to the appendix. And then an index will show you can cross search for words, certain words or phrases. So it's like, okay, I was looking for the word screwdriver, and I couldn't remember which page I saw that word on. So you can go back to the index, look for the word screwdriver, and it'll tell you all the different pages you can find that word on. So you can kind of cross search and look in multiple places for the same thing. It's kind of your Control F on a Word document. Control F is to find a word, right? That's what your index and your glossary and your table of contents will do. It's just manually. So lots of books still have them, and if you have a textbook that's online, it's in PDF form, these are kind of null and void because you can just Control F in the word that you're looking for and find it. But this helps for your paper books, so you actually have to read your instruction manuals, your textbooks, things that are important for the job site. Okay, oops. So reading tips, you guys have probably been reading quite a bit out of your GED packets, out of your NCCER packets that you've been getting. We've been doing a lot of reading since we're not together and being able to do stuff together. So awesome job with what you guys have done. I know you guys have all turned into really good work. I've seen it. So nice work on that. Some tips for reading, just in general, not just for construction stuff, or just in general for reading out of any sort of textbook. Find a good place where you're not going to be super distracted. I have my little workstation. I'm not at it now because I wanted to sit with my back in something, but I have a little workstation that is generally distraction free. It sits up so the dogs don't come and bug me. And I only have 10 minutes left on this meeting, so I'm going to hurry this up. But have a nice little space where you can go and read and without any distractions and keep yourself focused. Take notes if you need to. Go and skim that table of contents so that you know what you're about to read, especially if it's a textbook. And then something that they like to point out here, especially if you're trying to read an instruction manual, is to picture yourself performing the task that you're trying to learn about in order to understand the reading better. Has anyone ever done that when they're reading an instruction manual, actually picturing yourself doing the thing? Nice, awesome. Yeah, it can help you actually if you can't picture yourself doing it, that means you're not understanding it, right? It kind of helps you be like, okay, if I can't see exactly where I'm supposed to put this screwdriver, where this screw is supposed to go, so that means I need to go back and read that section that tells you that. It kind of helps you troubleshoot and figure out where the tough parts are in this task that you're about to do. And that's true for anything, but especially if you're doing trying to figure out how to do something on a construction site and reading an instruction manual. And then, of course, go back and reread if you're not sure how to do anything specific. Okay, this PowerPoint likes to kind of jump around a little bit. So now we're going to move on to writing. When you're making an important job-centered document, like a resume, for example, is a great example of that. What do you think? I'm going to scoot over to this one really quick. What do you think is better fonts for creating a resume? These fonts or these fonts? Number 1 font or number 2 font? What do you guys think? I'll show you again. Font on the first page, font on the second page. What do you guys think?
What were you saying? I lagged out.
Oh, if you're trying to write a professional document for work, like a resume, which kind of fonts should you use? Should you use these kind of fonts, number 1, or should you use these kind of fonts, number 2?
Number 1.
And why is that?
Because it looks more professional and less scribbly-like.
Less scribbly. I like that definition. These ones are just, go for it.
People also say like penmanship shows how, I don't know how you say it, shows how much of a person's dedicated to doing something. So like if you see him scribble it, half-assing it, that means they're not going to get nothing done.
Very possible, right?
Half of it done, if anything.
Right. It's kind of showing the kind of person that you are. That's some of that nonverbal communication that we talked about, right? If you're half-assing it and you're just kind of doing scribbles and not putting a lot of work into it, that might show what kind of person you are, what kind of worker you are, without even saying a word to them. They can kind of figure that out. I thought about everything. Yeah, these kind of fancy fonts, the specialty fonts they call them, are just hard to read. They don't look that professional. They're harder for somebody to read. They take up more space on a page typically, so they make things look all big and unnecessarily. So yeah, if you're making a professional email or an email or a resume, or you're writing a page that needs to go out to a client, or you're writing something on letterhead, it's going to be important that you use a nice font that's easy to read. These are good examples. You see Calibri's not even on here. I think that these are a bit older. But the default font for Word now is Calibri, but also Times New Roman is great. I like Arial as well. Verdana is nice. There are a lot of options that are easy to read. Just choose one of those kind of nice, easy to read ones.
Just like the normal wide bold words or something?
Exactly. Not something that looks like cursive or anything like that. I think you guys already knew that, but definitely. Okay, we've got 6 minutes left, so I'm going to get through what I can, but we might have to pick this back up on Thursday when we come back.
Okay.
Here is moving more into the content of writing, so writing an important piece. So has anybody written an essay, like sat down, written more than 1 paragraph at a time, done an essay? Gwen has.
I've written essays on books, but not what you're doing.
Okay, so you've had to like write a book report, for example?
Yeah, because they'll just tell you, write about the beginning, middle, and ending of whatever your story is.
Right. Okay, so you've had to do something similar.
And then give something fun facts about it, and then something you least like about it.
Right. Okay, awesome. So you've done probably something similar to this. What about you, Billy? Have you written an essay before?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you guys all have at least some sort of experience in writing. Good. So they give you kind of the best strategy to go about writing a piece. I have written 10-page papers in college where you have to write about the same thing for literally 10 pages at a time. I'm sure Alex has written more than that, as he has a master's degree now, and they require 20 to 40 page essays sometimes.
My undergrad thesis, it was 68 pages.
Oh, stop it.
Alex.
That was even for undergrad.
Where are you so quiet for?
My master's, I'm still finishing it up. I'm at 130 something pages last I looked.
130 something pages?
That's crazy. You're making me scared to go get my master's degree. So he really just proved my point, is that sometimes we have to write seriously insanely long essays or documents on the same topic. And so in order to do that, think about 130 pages. What is the best way to do that? For some people, we all have a different way of getting our thoughts out to begin with. Sometimes you just need to start writing to get some ideas out. But in general, a really good structure to follow when you need to start an essay or start a body of writing is to follow these steps here. So the first step would be pre-writing, and that's just getting your ideas out. Make a little web diagram, brainstorm some ideas, list some ideas that you want to cover. Some of the topics and as part of your greater topic that you want to cover in your essay. Create an outline. This paragraph, we'll talk about this thing. The next paragraph, we'll talk about the next thing. Get it really laid out so that you know exactly what you're going to write. And then that's when you can start putting together your rough draft. Is your rough draft something that you turn into your professor, that you turn into your boss? What would you guys think based on the fact that it's called a rough draft? Would you turn it into to your boss right away? Gwen's shaking her head. Billy says no. Gwen shaking your head. I would agree with that. Your rough draft is getting that kind of skeletons. Okay, I have my ideas out. I just need to start writing these paragraphs. I can worry about grammar later. I can worry about spelling later. That's not important.
Spell correction and spaces.
I just need to get the pages out. I need to get my words out and get the general structure put together and get my paragraph there, right? And then later, walk away for a minute. You don't have to edit it right away. You need to take a break from it and not look at it. And then when you come back, you can edit it and revise it and make sure that it's really getting your ideas across. Make sure that the grammar is correct, your spelling is correct, things like that. And their last step that they say is important, and I think it's important as well, is to go have somebody else read it. If it's not making sense to somebody else, then that probably means that you need to go back and revise. Maybe switch up some of your topics, right? Okay, maybe I need to talk about this first to make sure that this down here makes sense. Make sure they're checking for grammar and things like that. So when talking about writing an important document, these are the steps that our book, the NCCER book, lays out as the most important things to do first. And I would like to agree with it. I've written a few things, not quite like Alex, but I've written a few essays here and there. Getting your ideas out first before writing always makes things a lot easier. So you stay on topic. So there might be some test questions about that. So I wanted to make sure we covered that really well. Okay, we have to stop here. This PowerPoint isn't quite done yet. There's a little bit more that we talk about email and texting and things like that, but I'm running out of time here. So hopefully our next one can be a little bit longer. We can have more people at it as well. But our next class on Thursday is also going to talk about employability skills. So we're going to talk about resumes. We're going to talk about problem solving and things like that are just good general skills to have.
So we don't have an afternoon NCCER class for tomorrow?
Not tomorrow. Nope. We're going to pick up NCCER again on...
So tomorrow's schedule's just looking like Odyssey or what?
Tomorrow I got construction at like 8 in the morning with everybody, so I'm not going to be able to attend the meeting.
Yep,
right,
that's fine.
So that's fine. Right, so we're doing...
Well, there was no meeting, was there?
Everybody is we're going to do our morning meeting, but it's going to be broken out into separate groups. So we're starting, I think, Evan, have you talked to Brandy? Is that what you're saying?
I talked to Brandy.
I didn't hear nothing about that.
Right, because that means Brandy was talking to people individually about the times that they need to be on the meeting tomorrow to learn about Odyssey, where we're breaking them up.
Oh, I wasn't told about the time yet, but I talked to Brandy this morning.
Okay, so we're going to break out into sessions probably earlier than usual tomorrow so that we can have time to talk about Odyssey where before the GED classes. It's probably going to cut into civics. I don't think we're going to have a civics class tomorrow so that we have enough time to explain to everybody what Odyssey is.
Did you buy more of these?
So
were these the ones I had?
Tomorrow afternoon, Alex, you know what's happening tomorrow afternoon. We're about to, the meeting's about to end, but we'll put it on there. We'll make sure that you look at the schedule, okay, guys?
Yeah, so tomorrow afternoon, you don't have a class. All you have is if you need help with homework, I'll be doing math and science, and Jared will be doing reading and social studies.